Welcome to Meet the Authors. We're here at the Florida Writers Association in Orlando, Florida this weekend, where we're filming some of the 500 plus authors who are here learning about writing styles and promoting their books. And I am delighted to have with me a team here, Margaret Best and Mike Greene. Margaret, thanks for coming.
Hello, thank you for having us.
And Mike, so glad to have you on the show. Show us your book called Unsung Hero. Show it to the camera. Margaret Allen Greene Best. So tell us about your book.
My book is about my father. Daddy was a prisoner of war in the Second World War.
So was he like in Germany and Japan?
He was in the European theater.
Okay.
He was captured in Italy. He spent time in Italy as a prisoner of war. And when I grew up, I only knew that my father was a prisoner of war. I didn't know anything else because they didn't say anything about their times during the war. You know, that generation was a quiet generation.
They really were.
They were a very quiet generation. And so my dad, when we were transferred to Germany during the Berlin crisis, my father was still in the service.
Still in the service, so you were a child then.
So I was 16 years old. My brother here was 6, 8, something like that. And we were driving from Germany, where we lived, to Rome.
Oh.
And my mother was the navigator with a map. At the time we had a map.
Yeah. I remember those days.
Yeah. That's right. So they were driving in Italy, and my mother said, Albert, you have to turn around 2 clicks back. This is the wrong way.
Oh.
And my father said, all roads lead to Rome. So Daddy continued driving. No, Albert, you need to go back 2 clicks. Dad says, no, I know where I'm going. He continued driving. We're standing at the railroad track, and my father's looking up. And so I looked up. Daddy, what are you looking at? I said, I'm looking to see if the airplanes are coming.
Wow.
I said, Dad, there are no airplanes in the sky. He said, but Peggy, if they come, and they're ours, I know I'll be free.
Wow.
Okay.
A little flashback to being a prisoner of war.
Absolutely.
Wow.
We kept driving. There was a sign that said Ospitali. Ospitali means hospital in Italian. Daddy made a turn. Mother's quiet, everybody's quiet, we're all going, what's going on? Daddy made a turn, he went into this little tiny village. So this is 20 years after the war. He drove into this little village, parked right in front of this big concrete building that was surrounded by a fence. Got out of the car, walked around the building. Meantime, the whole village is coming out to see what this great big American car is doing parked in front of their village. So a whole family comes, the whole town comes out, and I follow my father. Daddy's looking around. He looks at a tree, a little tiny tree. He says, Peggy, I thought that was a big tree. Because I'd look out my window, and he pointed over there, that window.
Yeah.
And I would look at the tree, and I'd say, if I could climb that tree and jump the fence, I would be free.
Wow.
So then, the people came.
So this is the place he was a prisoner at, huh?
Yes, this was a
Wow.
little town where he was a prisoner held.
What great stories.
Then, the town lady, one of the ladies, spoke English, and she talked to us. They gave us a meal. Then they took us for a tour of the building.
Oh, wow.
So we're walking into this building, which was absolutely empty, swept clean. Dad walked up, I walked up, Michael ran up. And we walked into this corridor, and Dad saw this cabinet, and he opened the cabinet, and he looked in, and he looked down, and there's this hole, and he said, that was the job.
Wow.
My job, he said, was, because I was the youngest, the thinnest, and a private, I was given the job of going down that hole. They took a rope, they put me down the hole with a bucket, and I was to scoop up the stuff, stick it in the bucket, and pull the bucket up. And then they pulled the bucket down, and I stayed there, and I'd stick it up. He said, I thought I'd never get rid of the smell.
Wow, what a story. What memories. And this is in your book. These stories are in your book.
Yes.
And tell us about this book. What period of time these are wonderful stories. What period of time does this cover in your book?
Well, the book is actually it has memoirs.
This is your father.
This is my father. Looks just like my brother.
It does.
Or my brother looks just like my father.
Yeah.
But anyway, Daddy, what I did is I've been writing all my life.
Okay.
And I have been collecting family stories.
I love that. Some of the memoirs are so important, but also the skill of writing all your life. Anybody who wants to be a writer, you have to write, and to do that all the time, to build all the skills.
Absolutely. So I have collected stories, and I have my grandfather's story in here from World War I.
Oh, wow.
And then my father's story comes from after that. I have stories of how the family got here to the United States. That's in this book. Also, memories of my father's childhood, which he remembered, and I put it in this book. So it's got his memoirs plus his biography. The book goes from before he was born until he died. Daddy was in World War II. He went to Korea, and the only thing he said was it was cold.
That's all we said about
That's all we have in here about Korea.
We hear terrible stories about Korea, about how they suffered.
And then he went to Vietnam.
Wow.
Now, in Vietnam, the story that's in here is called Mogas Aflame, which my brother actually wrote most of that story. My Aunt Kathleen, who is my father's sister, never forgot anything, and she always kept everything.
Oh, wow.
So
Great
when
source.
Dad was 19, came back from the war, they, what do they call that? They debriefed him and gave him a transcript. He sent it to my Aunt Kathleen. When Aunt Kathleen realized he was writing this down, she sent it to him, and he used it to write this story. Mogas Aflame is about his time during the Tet Offensive of Vietnam.
Well, that was a scary time.
Yes. And he was in charge of something, I don't remember what, but it's in the book. And they were bombed. And Dad did some wonderful things at that time. It was all on the tape, and we, word for word, transcribed the tape in the book. So it has nothing in it other than what my father said.
That part of Vietnam, that's nice.
The Vietnam part.
And you edited put that together.
Yes,
we had tapes, because in those days, the tapes were wound around a reel.
Oh, yeah. The reel tape, yeah.
As soon as he arrived in Vietnam, he bought tape recorders and sent them to relatives. And we stayed in touch with reel-to-reel tape.
Wonderful. Great. Remember, you have his voice, too, which you don't often can't preserve much.
Yes.
And you're going to read a little section.
Yes, I can do that. This is of a firefight.
And this is a Vietnam section.
No, this will be just before he's captured.
In World War II in Italy. Okay.
He's walking point with a rifle grenade that fires grenades. All of a sudden, all hell broke loose. Machine guns, grenades, rapid rifle fire, and flares blasting away in front of us. I dove behind the steps of a house that wasn't there. After firing all my rifle grenades and tossing all my hand grenades, I flew a smoke grenade, but unfortunately I directed more direct fire into my position. A potato masher went off in front of me with such a loud noise I thought it blew my head off. Everything got very quiet. The Krauts kept sending up one flare after another. I noticed early on there didn't seem much way of noise coming from behind me. Then I got really scared. It got as quiet as a church. Having no ammunition left, I decided I was not about to fix my bayonet and charge the whole German army.
I guess not.
I was shaking with patriotism, and just stood there while hobnail boots came to my position. I didn't understand what they said, so I asked, "What did you say?" And a voice quietly behind me said, "He said, go up there." I recognized the voice of Sergeant Maxwell, who was apparently on the steps behind me. A group of Krauts started toward me, so I walked toward them. One of the Krauts pushed a German aside and promptly hit me in the face with his rifle butt. No more flares are going off. They asked me if there was someone else still out there. No, they all took off, I said. Apparently they believed me, because I found out much later that Sergeant Maxwell got back safely.
Oh, what a great story. That's a real patriot. Saved the life of his sergeant and all the other people. That is a wonderful story. It's a great book. Is it available? Can you get it off like Amazon and stuff?
Absolutely. It's available on Amazon.com. It's available at Lulu.com.
Okay.
It can also be purchased through Kindle.
Okay.
And, of course, I have it here.
Yeah, here at the Florida
But,
Writers Association.
It comes in hardback and in paperback, and on Kindle.
Well, it's a wonderful book, and just so important. Not only we talked about this earlier, these type of books, and if you watch those of us at home who think about writing about your own memoirs, your own family, these things are so important to preserve the history. So many other people want to read it, and it's certainly an important memoir for your own family use.
Yes, yes. And my message is, when I talk to the VA or the VFW or those different places, I tell those soldiers, thank you so much for what you've done. We are losing our cultural history. When you die, your story dies. Please write your story.
Pay attention. Thank you all for coming on the show. So, Margaret, thank you very much for coming on. And stay tuned. We'll be back either after this commercial break or next week with more authors and meet the authors. See you then.